Hello, football fans. Welcome back to week 4 of the 2023 season for the Scuffed Football Podcast. Sorry about last week. Work hit the fan, and we just didn't find the time before I left for the weekend, but we're back to cover the past couple of weeks. This is Noah. I'm Ted. We're here to cover scores, news, fantasy, gambling, the whole damn 9 yards. Best place to start, I think, is to talk about the undefeated teams. I think all 3 of them have questions now, but I also think that there's upside that, any one of these 3 teams could make some noise through the end of the season. So let's take them one at a time. Let's start with San Francisco. Upsides are obviously that they're beating the snot out of everybody. They have run game, they have the passing game, they have defense, like just everything is there. I think the question marks are, have they played an opponent worth a damn yet? I mean, their closest game was against the Rams, who I didn't believe were that good or at full strength. And they only beat them by 7 points. They beat the Giants, who have very clearly showed us that our defense is not ready to play against a good offense. And then they beat the shit out of the Steelers, who, again, just don't have the ability to compete with a team that's above average. How realistic do you see it being that they make a run?
I mean, I got to say, Niners are probably the best chance to do it. If anybody, I think they have the most talent. I think, they have everything going for them. Again, you mentioned it, and we talked about it last year, strength test. I don't think they've had that yet. I think it's going to be a while until we actually get to see a strength test for them. Again, they're pulling the Cardinals. Maybe if the Cardinals play the way that they did this week, maybe we can get a strength test. But I doubt that they'll be able to keep pace with the Niners. Again, I think overall, the Niners probably have the better offense and a really good defense. So overall, I think they're probably one of the better teams. So I think out of any of the undefeated ones, I think they'll probably have the best chance to make a run. But again, we'll have to see about strength tests. So.
Yeah, I'm with you, especially them being in the NFC. I mean, we mentioned it that there just aren't that many really good teams in the NFC. Most lists that I'm seeing kind of chalked it up to the Eagles, the Niners, the Cowboys. Cowboys lost a really suspect game that brings a whole bunch of questions. The Eagles haven't been firing on all cylinders. I think that kind of gives San Francisco the ability to just run through the conference. Sticking with the other NFC team that's undefeated, though, let's bring it to the Eagles. Obviously, they've won all their games. That's why we're here talking about them. But I think the question is just that they don't have all their pieces working yet. The run game seems to be the only thing that's working 100% the way they want it to. The passing game is not perfect. I feel like the play calling just hasn't quite been there at the right times. The defense seems to be giving up more yards and more plays than I think their defense is built to give up. But I think the biggest red flag for the Eagles is also that their schedule gets a whole lot tougher from here. Just before Thanksgiving, they're going to be out in Kansas City to play an away game against the team we've widely considered to be the best team in the league for a couple of years. What do you see for the Eagles? How do you see this 3-0 start ending up?
I mean, for the Eagles, I think it's a little different. I don't think they're as rounded as the Niners, but I will say again, you mentioned it. They're not firing on all cylinders. I'd love to see them get to that. I think they could be really, really tough to stop. But I mean, again, I think we kind of saw a glimpse of it this past Monday. They had somewhat, AJ Brown had 130 yards. They were doing decently in the air. Obviously Swift is a star, like I've been trying to say for the past 3 years. So who knows, But yeah, no, I agree. I think if they can lock in some of the mistakes that they're making, I think they could be really unstoppable. But I do agree. I think their schedule does get a little tougher. I don't see them staying undefeated, but I also see them constantly in every single game. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to squeak out a few wins here and there for an undefeated season or close to. But
sure. And then the last team to get to is the Dolphins. First off, if you watched any game this week, I hope it was a Dolphins game. I hope your fantasy teams had all of the Dolphins on it, because I'm sure you smoked your opponents if you had any one of those 4 guys performing. But they put up 70 points this week. The upside is very clearly that the Dolphins are going to score as often as they want to. The difficult parts, I think, for the Dolphins then become that the schedule and the conference are significantly harder. I mean, I think they've got, even if New England bottom feeds this division, I still think that they have a really good defense. The Jets still have the talent on the field, even if they're not performing. They still have the talent to make themselves be a part of big games. And then we know Buffalo to still be a pretty good team. They've still, like I said, got all of the good pieces to still be competitive, but there's so many more teams to walk through even outside their division, like Kansas City, who I mentioned, that are really going to make it tough for them to get through it. And then also you still kind of have to question Tua's health because we haven't gotten a full season out of it. Let's be realistic about the Dolphins. Where do we see this 3-0 start ending up?
I mean, again, we mentioned it. You mentioned it. They do have a lot tougher division than the others. I got to stick, to my guns. I still think Bills Mafia comes out on top. I think we do get a strength test, though. We see this coming week. I mean, we get Dolphins and Bills. We'll definitely see how the offense can perform against, a stout defense. Again, I don't expect them to put up 70. If they do against the Bills, I'm renouncing my Bills Mafia fanship and I'm leaving forever. But I do think that they are an explosive team. They definitely have the stars and positions. But again, it was still the Broncos defense. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mentioned his name a couple of weeks ago, but if you guys are interested in more in-depth analysis about how bad the Broncos defense was, or lack thereof, go watch Theo Ash's video. It was like 7 minutes long on TikTok, dude, but I was laughing the entire time at the Broncos just running away from tackling. It was the best. To move away from the undefeated teams, I kind of want to get into maybe the other big game this weekend, for lack of a better word. The Cardinals beating the Cowboys was super surprising, and I think it opens a whole lot of doors and a whole lot of question marks about the Cowboys. First off, I want to give the Cardinals their credit because they did look pretty good. But this is not what we expected to see out of this game at all. The Cowboys were running over their first two opponents and losing to a team that we were pretty confident was going to be bad this season in the Cardinals was really eye-opening. Are we feeling down on them? Do we think it's an off week? What's the play here?
I mean, again, we saw the first 2 weeks. Dallas performed great. We were talking about, maybe they can make a run. I'm so happy they lost. Fuck all of you guys who are Dallas Cowboys fans. But anyway, no, I think their defense took a little bit of a hit, obviously, with Trayvon Diggs going down. But I still don't think that's like losing Trayvon Diggs doesn't mean you should lose by 2 scores to the lowly Cardinals. So there's definitely something going on there. Again, maybe it was just an off week. But again, you said it creates some doubts, and I can't help but doubt maybe this is the Cowboys of old that we've been seeing. They start off strong. They're just almost in a way pretenders. But I guess we'll find out as obviously the season goes. 3-game sample isn't enough, but we'll see.
I think it's really eye-opening, particularly because of the 2 opponents that they beat. The Giants' defense doesn't look all there, so for them to get beat by 40 points, by the Cowboys, all right, great. The Cowboys have an offense. They won that game. Beating the Jets, same idea. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the Jets have the talent on the field, but they're clearly underperforming, and not having Aaron Rodgers means that it's a whole lot harder for their offense to work. But then to bring those 2 games into this week and then lose to the Cardinals makes me think like maybe they can walk over worse teams and the Cardinals are better than we think they are. I watched Dak Prescott really struggle and force balls that he shouldn't all day long. Their defense wasn't stopping Josh Dobbs of all quarterbacks to not stop. There's so many questions. I think that are they pretending? Was this an off week? I really want to see a couple more games against decent teams where I get a little more information about the Cowboys. It's just a really confusing loss to me. All right. The next place I want to get to, I just kind of want to talk about some of these scores here and go over some highlights that we had. I think that if you watched any coverage this weekend, you probably only saw the Dolphins and the Broncos because the Dolphins scored 70 points. But I think that there were a lot of interesting games here that just kind of happened quietly. The one that was most notable to me, I literally did not know until today that the Bills beat the Commanders 37-3. I had no idea that was such a blowout. Chargers and Vikings was a close, fun game, and the Chargers play calling and their wide receivers were just immaculate. That was a fun game to watch. The Lions won quietly. The Packers had a comeback drive to win the game. The Texans really upset the Jags. There was just so many quiet things that happened this weekend. You didn't see anything other than Monday night previews and the Dolphins scored 70 points. So what'd you see interesting this week? What kind of maybe snuck under the radar that was most interesting to you?
I mean, again, I was definitely watching the Bills game. I remember I turned it off. I was like, okay, easy win, easy shutout. And then, I looked later on and I saw the 3 points. And I was like, are you kidding me? We couldn't hold them, but it's fine. It's fine. Whatever. It's fine. I will say the Chargers and Vikings game, that was a blast to watch. That was great. Obviously, the Vikings started off pretty slow in the first quarter, but then they got going. I thought Kirk Cousins was going to be clutch, but thankfully, the Chargers were able to shut that down. I think out of those two, I mean, both of them were heading in 0-2. That win was really, really big for each team. And I think they needed it for their playoff hopes. I will say I got to give Jordan Love some credit. Obviously, that comeback win down 17-0 at half, and he comes back and wins it 18-0. So props to Jordan Love for playing like that. I definitely didn't expect that from him, considering how the first three quarters were also going. So very happy for him. Yeah.
I think the other place to talk about with the what's happening quietly, I guess, is to talk about the AFC South. I know this division sucks. I know everyone's bad, but I'm still kind of surprised at what we've seen after 3 games. Beginning of the year, both of us pretty much picked the Jags to, walk through this division. We gave the Titans a little love that, they still, like, the Jags still had to prove that they could beat the Titans. But, the Colts are winning the division at 2-1. Everybody else is 1-2. And I really don't have much positive to say about the Jags, but everybody else, there's some upside at least. The Colts, obviously, Anthony Richardson is playing much better than I expected him to just walk in and play. He looks really comfortable. There's a lot of upside there, and I think the Colts could be surprisingly better than we thought, even if not surprisingly good. The Texans, Stroud, again, looks really comfortable for having such a shit offense. The line, the weapons, the whole thing, like, CJ Stroud still looks pretty good. And honestly, the Titans are keeping themselves relevant. Tannehill doesn't look great. They haven't gotten Hopkins involved nearly the way that they should for him to be as dominant as he is. But I think there's still, like, potential that is visible on the field that gives you some hope as a Titans fan. The Jags are the only ones that really I don't have a whole lot good to say. I know Calvin Ridley had his immaculate week 1. Like, he was really good. But beyond that, they haven't done anything to stand out in a division we expected them to be competitive in.
Yeah, I know we had mentioned it at the very beginning of this season. The NFC South seemed like we could have another losing team make the playoffs. I'm almost willing to say we could see an AFC South team also make the playoffs with a losing record. Again, obviously 3 of them 1-2. It's still 3 games in. I will see more, but I gotta agree. Like, there's bright spots for everyone, kind of, but there's also big questions about everyone in that division. So,
absolutely. I think that the next place to get to is to talk a little bit about injuries. I'm pretty sure 2 weeks ago we brought up that J.K. Dobbins was done for the year, but the Ravens lost another running back in Gus Edwards. Losing their run game very clearly hurt them because they lost to the Colts in OT. They just kind of felt pretty one-dimensional. They couldn't get a whole lot done.
And on top of that, obviously Justice Hill had his toe issue, so even they lost him for a little bit. So I gotta agree. Their running back room right now is very hobbled. I think that's why we saw so much running from Lamar this week. He kind of just had to do it himself. But yeah, that's very interesting for them.
Not super sustainable. I also the Bears got wrecked by injuries this week, particularly losing 3 defensive backs against an offensive juggernaut like the Chiefs. Like, the Chiefs get back Travis Kelce, and all of a sudden, everybody on the Bears who's able to defend a receiver just dropped like flies, like just all at the same time. I don't think anyone was surprised by the Chiefs winning that game 41-10, but also, like, the Bears losing 3 DBs hurts a lot.
Yeah, it's still the Chiefs. Yeah, it was just super unlucky for them. Either way, I think we both would have picked the Chiefs to win this pretty handedly. But yeah, it definitely does stink to lose. I mean, 3 of your starters. So
yeah. And then the other thing, the other big injury this week, Mike Williams is down for the year. Was it ACL or MCL? He had a really good game against the Vikings, but getting carted off. I mean, this could change stuff for the Chargers. Like, I think their 1-2 punch of receivers between Williams and Allen looks a whole lot better than just Keenan Allen.
Oh, I agree. I mean, obviously, it's another weapon. Hopefully, some Chargers receivers will step up. It can't just be the Keenan Allen show. Obviously, defenses will lock onto that. I love Mike Williams. I used to follow him back in Clemson, but he's so injury prone recently. I feel like we haven't seen a full season out of him, and it really does suck for him. I feel for him. That's a bad break.
Absolutely, especially after such a great week. Like, that's a really high to fall to a really deep low. And then the other injury issues, I think, are a little more obvious, even if they didn't happen this past week. We can't not talk about the Jets quarterback issues. So obviously, Aaron Rodgers being injured. Look, nobody trusts Zach Wilson. There is not a soul on earth other than Zach Wilson who trusts Zach Wilson to run this offense, and I get it. But I believe you were telling me just before we started recording that they signed another quarterback.
They did, and Trevor Siemian. So
I don't know that there are a ton of quarterback options out there, right? But like, I'd feel much more confident as a Jets fan if they signed. Honestly, if they signed Tim Tebow, I'd feel better about it. Flacco is still out there somewhere. I know that he wasn't great for the Jets, but they also look a whole lot better on offense now than when Flacco was there. Cam Newton's still looking for a starting job. There's been rumors left, right, and sideways about this being the opportunity for Colin Kaepernick. Like, of all things that you say could solve your issues in the quarterback room, all of the grief that players are giving each other on the field, the internal conflict will be solved by Trevor Siemian? That's nuts.
I gotta agree. I mean, obviously Kaepernick was trying to make a comeback, and there's other quarterbacks that could just and I get it. I mean, obviously their head coach was sticking by Wilson, but there's got to be a point where it's like you just got to see that it's not working, obviously. And I agree. I don't think Simeon's the answer, but who knows? So
I also start to wonder about the trade market, right? Like, I know that Trey Lance just got traded to the Cowboys, right? But like, the Cowboys then now have behind Dak Prescott 2 guys that at one point or another have started games. Obviously, there's still question marks about Trey Lance's health and all that. But even if you traded for Cooper Rush, right? Like, I can't imagine that the trade market to go get one of their quarterbacks would be much higher than the 4th round pick they gave up to San Francisco to bring in Trey Lance. Like, even to trade away a 3rd round pick doesn't seem like that high a cost to get something that you can almost guarantee is going to look better than Zach Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, and what did their backup, Dallas's backup, like Cooper Rush? I mean, he went 4-0 last season.
It was 4-0 or 4-1, yeah.
Like that's a proven commodity. I mean, Zach Wilson has not won a single game in his life. No, not obviously not one. But I swear, dude, it seems like he's always losing. So, but like, there's so many other options, man.
It just seems like the market should be there for them to find something. And with all that strife on the sideline, man, I would have to think that the Jets would be pretty eager to get Wilson out of there. All right. Like I said, this week was pretty quiet despite having some good games. I hope you guys got to watch some good football, but everything was super quiet that I don't feel like there's a whole lot of big stories beyond those. So I kind of want to transition into fantasy. Big place to start for me personally anyway. Adam Thielen, as of this morning, is still available in 40% of ESPN leagues, and he's the 19th highest ranked wide receiver in the league. I think you were looking before we started, like even more recently, that he was ranked 9th for this week. That's insanity that he's still available in 40% of leagues when on several teams he'd be good enough to be your wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it was a different ceiling for him that they were expecting with, obviously, what's the Panthers QB? Bryce Young, right. I think Andy Dalton actually helped out because he's more experienced. He wasn't he was able to kind of throw a little bit more. And I think that's what got Thielen a little bit more involved this week. But even last week, he had a pretty good week. I agree. I mean, shit, pick him up if you can. Like, maybe don't start him every week. Make sure there's a decent, opponent. But like, he's a consistent double-digit, receiver, and he's still a very good vet. So
he was productive even when he was behind Diggs in the rotation in Minnesota. Like, the idea that he just went undrafted, like not picked up this week, is kind of insane to me. 40% of leagues having a guy that's that productive available when he's starter quality good. Like you said, maybe he's not starter every single week because you still have your doubts about Carolina and their ability to get him the ball, but like, that's way too much production for 3 weeks and he's not on a team in 40% of leagues. The other thing that I want to bring up for fantasy, we got to talk about the Bengals. I think we've let him skate not talking about it for 3 weeks, at least not fantasy-wise. Joe Burrow is underperforming. T. Higgins is underperforming. Jamar Chase is clearly underperforming. How long are we hanging on to Bengals in hopes that they bounce back instead of just maybe this is a down year?
I do have to say, I think first and foremost, obviously that injury to Joe Burrow is affecting him. Obviously he played last night. He was doing an interview just saying, the fear of 0-3 was just too much that he risked, re-injuring it. Again, they haven't performed that well. Jamar Chase kind of had a bounce back week in a PPR format, just because he had like 11 grabs. So, but beyond that, I mean, Joe Mixon's not even performing up to where we expected him. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would hold out. Obviously, Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon are probably the two best stars on that right now. But like T. Higgins, I'd be benching him right now. Like, I wouldn't worry too much. Obviously, maybe once, Joe Burrow's fully healed, we'll get to see the Bengals of old of last season. But for right now, my confidence in them is just very low. So
I think the scary part for me is that they're just not scoring. Like, even though they won this week, they still only scored 19 points, right? Like, that's tough. The loss to the Ravens last week, they scored 24 points, right? Like, if guys aren't reaching the end zone, so much of their productivity goes down. And I know obviously in a PPR format, like 11 grabs helps, but if you're not going to score, like, you're still missing out on points on the table. Like, the Bengals offense being so dominant, scoring 1 million points last season is why all these guys look good. But like, has Joe Mixon even reached the end zone yet?
I think he did last night, actually. He was one touchdown, but that's it. That's it. For the entire 3 games, it's just been one touchdown.
Right, and that's super hard to fall behind. Obviously Burrow's injury adds, some question marks there that, like, if he's healthy, the receivers have more opportunity. I get it, but also just this long without scoring a ton of points, it's scary to be and have them on your fantasy team, man. It's tough. Anybody else you saw in fantasy this week? Anything that stands out to you?
Not really. I mean, I saw Keenan Allen fucking put up 45 points, so that was something. Yeah, thank God I wasn't going up against them this week. That would have been something else. But I'm expecting those numbers. I mean, obviously 45 was incredible. It's not volume wise; he just can't keep it up. So obviously we'll expect a dip. But I mean, he's the only option they have right now. So.
That's true. He's
until Eckler comes back or some receivers prove themselves. Like, he's literally it. It's just Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen. So
yeah, I also want to give some credit to anybody who played the Dolphins this week because goddamn did they score a lot of points. Their backup running back, whose name I still am not sure that I know confidently, O'Shane, is that it? Something like that? O'Shane something? I don't know. Anyway,
something like that.
He got into the end zone 4 times. I Mostert's got 3 or 4 touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Watt, like even playing Tua it looks so good. He only played for 3 quarters and he was a top performing quarterback this week. Like, absolutely nuts. I think that wraps us up for all of that stuff. I think all we've got left to get to is gambling. So obviously without a podcast last week, we didn't make picks. I still bet on FanDuel, but I don't want to talk about it. For week 2 picks on the podcast, both of us went 8-7-1. That brings Noah to 18-13-1, and I'm at 19-12-1. Still looking way better than last year, where I was 8-24 after 2 weeks. For this week, As always, lines are provided by FanDuel as of Tuesday. They're subject to change. Please gamble responsibly. Understand we're not providing advice, just providing our picks for games. And if you or a loved one has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's get it started with Thursday night's game. Detroit at Green Bay. Detroit's a 1.5 favorite on the road.
I'm going to let you go first on this one because I don't even know where I'm going.
I'm still kind of suspect on Green Bay. I think Detroit's the better team. I'm pretty confident that they can play a good game. Green Bay's kind of hit or miss for me, so I'm going to fade Green Bay and take Detroit.
See, I would normally agree with you, but we just watched Jordan Love put up a pretty good comeback performance, and I think they're going to have to keep pace. I mean, it is at Lambeau. I'm going to take the Packers on this one, although I don't feel good about it.
It's admittedly a really tough place to start. I have Atlanta and Jacksonville. Jags are 3-point favorites at home. This is another tough one, man. Not even because I think that highly of the Falcons, just that I haven't seen Trevor Lawrence or the Jags do that well. And Atlanta's defense is okay. It's serviceable. I still think I'm going to take Jacksonville, mostly because they need the win, and I think that on paper they're a better team, but I don't feel great about that one either.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it is technically a home game, but it is in London, so I feel like no one has the home, team advantage there. I'll fade you. I'll go Falcons on this one.
All right. I've got Miami and Buffalo. Despite a 70-point week, Buffalo is still a 3-point favorite at home.
I gotta go Bills. I mean, come on. Simple.
I feel like I have to take Miami. There's no way that you're an underdog when you put up 70 points the week before. If you're gonna give me 3 points, I don't think it's impossible for Miami to win this game. I think it'll be obviously closer than last week for the Dolphins, but it is so hard not to pick a 70-point team. Next game I've got is the Steelers at the Texans. Steelers are 3-point favorites on the road.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to take the Steelers. I think their offense looked a little bit better this past week. I don't think Houston can continue and do the same thing to 2 weeks in a row that they did to the Jags last week. So I'll take Pittsburgh.
I'll go Texans because I think they're sneaky. They'll be there.
All right, I got the Rams at the Colts. Colts are 1.5 favorites at home. Do we get Cooper Kupp this week, or is he still out?
I think he's still out because obviously they put him on IR.
That's right. So he's got to miss 4 weeks.
So, yeah.
Okay. If that's the case, I'll take a flyer. I'll take Indy.
Yeah, I'll go Colts as well.
I don't like it. I think the Rams are better than I give them credit for, but man, that's 1.5 is a weird spread for those two teams. I've got Minnesota at Carolina. Minnesota's 3.5 favorites on the road.
Yeah, I'll take Vikings on that one, 100%.
I think I'm with you. They need to win somewhere, and I think Carolina's a relatively easy team to do that with. Yeah. I've got Tampa Bay, New Orleans. Saints are 3.5 favorites at home.
No.
Yeah. I'm going to take Tampa. I think Baker's looked pretty good. I know this was not the best week for the Bucks, but I mean, like you said, the Eagles can be a pretty tough team. New Orleans giving up that loss to the Packers last week after going up 17-0 doesn't give me a lot of faith. I'll take Tampa and the points.
Yeah, I think I got to go Tampa as well. Oh, God. Look, for Baker Mayfield? That's weird.
Somebody's got to win.
Yeah, right?
All right. I have Washington and Philadelphia. Eagles are 8.5 favorites.
I think that's a pretty easy Eagles.
Yeah. I don't like the spread. It starts to get in that weird place where I don't think the Eagles are playing super well, but the Commanders just got the piss beat out of them. So I think the Eagles can rip that one off. I've got Denver and Chicago. Denver's 3.5 favorites on the road. I can't believe that they are the favorites after giving up 70 points. I'm taking Chicago. Like I don't even care. It's Denver. I don't care.
I'll go Broncos. I feel like they might actually. Somebody's got to win here, and I don't think the Bears have that in them. So I think Broncos here for me. But
all right, I have Baltimore and Cleveland. Cleveland is 2.5 favorites at home. This one's tough only because I don't know if Gus Edwards plays. I feel like if Baltimore's got a running game, I really think the Ravens are significantly better than the Browns. But if they don't have a running back room and it's just Lamar passing or running, and you know the ball is gonna be in his hands every time, that's really tough to win. I'm gonna take Baltimore, but I really don't like picking either one.
I think I'm going to go Browns here. I think that Browns rush defense is like incredible this year. So I'm going to stock up on them. I'm going Browns.
All right. I've got Cincinnati, Tennessee. The Bengals are 2.5 favorites on the road. I don't like picking Cincinnati the way that they've played, but I feel like I kind of have to. Like, Tennessee hasn't looked that good, and 2.5 is not enough to entice me. Like, Cincinnati should win, I think.
I'm hoping for a bounce back week. I'm going to go Titans, but I think it's very likely that the Bengals will win. So we'll see.
All right. I've got Las Vegas and the Chargers. Chargers are 6-point favorites at home.
I'm going Chargers on that one.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think they looked really good this past week. Even with Mike Williams being out, Vegas has kind of struggled, so I can get behind that. I've got New England at Dallas. Cowboys are 7-point favorites at home. I'm going to be honest. I expect Dallas to win the game, but New England's defense is pretty good. That 7 feels too big for me. I'll take New England. I don't like it, but I'll take New England.
Oh God. Yeah, I think I'll go New England as well. I agree. I think Cowboys will win this, but I think that spread is a little too big.
Well, while we're on the topic of big spreads, Arizona, San Francisco, Niners are 14-point favorites at home. I hate that I'm doing this, especially because I want to believe that Arizona can keep this closer than 14 after beating the Cowboys, but I absolutely cannot do it. San Francisco looks way too good. I'm taking the Niners.
Let's go. You finally picked the big spread. Yes. I'm going to match you. I think Niners win this pretty handily, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cardinals are in there, first half, second half. So
because I picked the 14 spread, they're going to win by 13 now. Like it's going to fucking happen. I've got Kansas City and the Jets. Kansas City is a 9.5 favorite on the road. I'm doing it again. I'm taking Kansas City. I hate it. I'm taking Kansas City. God damn it.
This is amazing. I'll never forget this week, Yeah, I'll also go Chiefs. I just think that Jets just won't be able to keep up. Well, I think offensively, they won't be able to keep up.
Plus, that stadium's going to go nuts because now it's all Swift fans. And look, it's going to be a Chiefs home game because the Swifties are everywhere, dog. And then I've got, as our last game, Seattle and the Giants. Who the fuck scheduled this for Monday night? I have the Giants as 1.5 favorites at home.
I think I got to go Seahawks here.
I'm with you. Giants haven't showed me much of anything. I think Seattle's playing pretty well, just quietly. It's hard for me to believe the Giants are even favorites here, so I'll take Seattle. Yeah. That wraps us up. I did my preamble beforehand instead of afterwards. I'm just shaking things up all over the place. So I think that wraps us up this week. I got nothing left. If you're all set, then I think that wraps us up. We'll see you guys next week for week 5.